What if the coins in your pocket could whisper secrets from 2,000 years ago? Picture holding a small, weathered piece of metal and realizing it once passed through the hands of emperors, merchants, or soldiers, each scratch and dent a silent witness to history's grandest moments. These ancient coins aren't just currency, they're time capsules carrying stories of lost civilizations, epic battles, and forgotten legends. And today, we're diving deep into 30 of the rarest, most extraordinary coins from antiquity, each one a gateway to a world long gone but forever preserved in metal and memory. Think about the last time you held a coin. Maybe it was a quarter, a dime, or a nickel, something so ordinary you barely noticed it. Now imagine that same coin surviving wars, empires rising and falling, and centuries buried beneath the earth, only to resurface with tales to tell. That's the magic of ancient coins. They're not just relics, they're storytellers. From the golden drachmas of Athens to the silver denarii of Rome, these coins were struck by hands that shaped history, and now they speak to us across the ages. This journey isn't just about metal and markings, it's about uncovering the lives behind them. Who held this coin? Was it a soldier paid for his service, a trader sailing distant seas, or a citizen buying bread in a bustling marketplace? Every coin has a soul, a connection to the people who once relied on it. And as we explore these 30 rare treasures, you'll feel that connection too. Get ready to step into the shoes of archaeologists, collectors, and historians, because what we're about to discover isn't just numismatics, it's a window into humanity itself. The stories are waiting. Let's begin. The Athenian Owl Tetradrachm is more than just a coin, it's a legend cast in silver. Minted for over 400 years from the 5th to the 1st century before the Common Era, this iconic piece was the gold standard of its time, quite literally. On one side, the stern yet dignified profile of Athena, goddess of wisdom and patroness of Athens, stares back at you. Turn it over, and her wise companion, the owl, stands poised with an almost knowing gaze, flanked by an olive sprig and the Greek letters Alpha, Theta, Epsilon. The design was so trusted that merchants from Egypt to the Black Sea accepted it without question, making it the dollar of the ancient world. But why an owl? In ancient Athens, the owl wasn't just a bird, it was a symbol of Athena's far-seeing wisdom, a creature that could see in the dark, much like the city's famed philosophers sought truth in ignorance. The olive branch, a nod to Athena's gift to the city, the sacred tree that secured her patronage over Athens. Every detail was a message. This coin wasn't just money, it was a testament to Athenian power, culture, and divine favor. What's fascinating is how consistent the design remained. Even as empires rose and fell, the Owl Tetradrachm kept its form, a rare example of stability in the chaotic ancient world. Alexander the Great himself, when he conquered Athens, chose not to replace it, proof of its unrivaled prestige. Today, holding one is like touching a piece of that legacy. The weight in your palm, the slight unevenness of the strike, each imperfection tells you it was made by human hands, hands that also built the Parthian and debated democracy. These coins didn't just buy goods, they bought influence. Athenian silver funded temples, navies, and the very idea of Western civilization. And when you find one now, weathered but still proud, you're holding a fragment of that story, a tiny, shimmering bridge between our world and the age of Socrates, Pericles, and the birth of ideas that still shape us today. The Lydian Lion coin doesn't just belong to history, it made history. Struck in the 7th century before the Common Era in the Kingdom of Lydia, nestled in what's now Western Turkey, this small, lumpy disk of electrum, a shimmering blend of gold and silver, holds the distinction of being the world's first standardized currency. Picture it, no more haggling over the weight of metal chunks or the purity of ingots. For the first time, value was sealed into a portable, recognizable form, stamped with the snarling visage of a lion, the ultimate symbol of Lydian royalty. This wasn't just money, it was a revolution in your palm. That lion wasn't chosen at random. In the ancient Near East, the lion represented raw power and divine authority, a fitting emblem for kings like Aliats and Croesus, whose wealth became legendary. The coin's design was simplicity itself. On one side, the lion's head, often accompanied by a sunburst or geometric marks. On the reverse, just punch marks from the minting process. Yet this modest imagery carried immense weight. For traders crossing the Aegean or navigating the bustling markets of Sardis, Lydia's capital, these coins meant trust. No need to bite the metal to test its purity, the royal seal guaranteed it. Electrum, the material itself, tells a story. Mined from the Pactolus River, where King Midas was said to have washed away his golden touch, this natural alloy was abundant in Lydia but notoriously inconsistent in composition. Early Lydian rulers ingeniously turned this quirk into a feature, standardizing the coin's size and weight while leaving the exact gold to silver ratio variable a clever way to maintain control over their value. Over time, Croesus refined the system, separating gold and silver into distinct coins, but it was those first electrum lions that lit the fuse of monetary innovation. The impact rippled far beyond Lydia's borders. Imagine a world where trade relied on barter or cumbersome weighed metals, and then suddenly this. Merchants could travel lighter, deals could be struck faster, and economies could scale in ways previously unimaginable. Greek city-states took note, adopting and adapting Lydia's idea, and from there the concept of coinage spread like wildfire. Even the Bible referenced Lydian wealth, with Croesus becoming synonymous with opulence. Holding a Lydian lion today is like touching the birth certificate of modern finance. The surfaces are often worn, the lion's features softened by millennia of circulation, but the legacy is razor-sharp. These coins didn't just facilitate trade, they laid the groundwork for empires, funded armies, and ultimately shaped how humans assign value to the abstract. Every credit card swipe, every digital transaction traces back to that electrum spark in Lydia. The lion may have faded, but its roar still echoes. The Decadrachm of Syracuse isn't just a coin, it's a miniature masterpiece that froze 4th century Sicily in silver. Weighing as much as 10 drachmas, this hefty medallion was more than currency. It was a declaration of artistic brilliance, struck to commemorate Syracuse's victories in the Olympic chariot races. On one side, the nymph Arethusa gazes serenely, her hair swirling with dolphins and the Greek word sigma upsilon, rho alpha kappa omicron sigma I, ota omegan u, Syracosian, encircling her like a halo. Flip it over and you're thrust into the thunderous energy of the hippodrome. 4 horses at full gallop, their muscles straining, while a charioteer whips the reins above the inscription Kappa Iotum Uo Megan U Kimen, the signature of the engraver who elevated coinage to high art. Kimen's genius lies in the details. Arethusa's face isn't just a profile. It's alive with subtle depth, her flowing locks blending into the dolphins as if the sea itself cradles her. This wasn't mere decoration, it was myth-made metal. According to legend, Arethusa, pursued by the river god Alpheus, fled beneath the Ionian Sea to resurface in Syracuse's freshwater spring, becoming the city's guardian spirit. By immortalizing her, Syracuse wasn't just celebrating beauty, it was weaving its identity into every coin. Then there's the chariot scene, a kinetic explosion frozen in silver. Most ancient coins depicted static symbols, but Kimen broke the mold. The horses' legs overlap, their hooves kicking up invisible dust, and the chariot tilts precariously, a snapshot of speed so vivid you can almost hear the crowd roar. These weren't generic designs, they were tributes to real victories, likely funded by Dionysius I, Syracuse's tyrant, who famously bankrolled Olympic teams to flex his city's prestige. What makes this coin legendary, though, is its scarcity. Unlike mass-produced currency, the Decadrachm was a prestige object, possibly gifted to athletes or dignitaries. Few survived, and today finding one is the numismatic equivalent of uncovering a lost Raphael painting. When a specimen surfaced at auction in 2021, it fetched millions, not just for its silver but for the story it carries. This coin bridges worlds: the athletic glory of ancient Greece, the political machinations of Sicilian tyrants, and the dawn of art that transcended commerce. To hold one would be to touch the moment when money became immortal. The Gold Stater of Croesus wasn't just another coin, it was a financial revolution forged in precious metal. Picture this: 6th century before the Common Era, in the wealthy kingdom of Lydia, where King Croesus looked at his father's Electrum Lion coins and thought, why mix gold and silver when purity itself could be power? With that decision, he minted history's first bimetallic currency, pure gold staters alongside pure silver coins, each stamped with the confronting heads of a lion and a bull, symbols of strength and prosperity. This wasn't just money, it was a statement. For the first time, value wasn't hidden in an alloy's unpredictable ratios. It was transparent, consistent, and unmistakably royal. That lion and bull motif, far from random. In ancient Anatolia, these animals represented opposing but complementary forces, the lion as the fierce protector of kings, the bull as the embodiment of fertile wealth. Locked in eternal confrontation on the coin's surface, they mirrored Lydia's own dominance over trade and resources. Merchants from Babylon to Athens instantly recognized these coins, their purity guaranteed by Croesus's seal. No more weighing or testing: the king's face might as well have been on them, and thus a phrase was born: rich as Croesus. It wasn't hyperbole. The man's gold deposits were so vast they funded the very concept of economic credibility. But Croesus's genius wasn't just in the gold, it was in the system. By introducing two separate metals, he created a flexible monetary standard: need to buy a loaf of bread. Use the smaller silver coins, purchasing a shipment of olive oil. The gold staters had you covered. This bimetallic approach stabilized trade across continents, allowing Lydia to act as the ancient world's central bank. Even the Persians, who later conquered Lydia, kept the system intact, spreading Croesus's innovation from the Aegean to the Indus. The craftsmanship alone was groundbreaking. Unlike the crude lumps of earlier electrum, these staters were meticulously struck, their designs crisp and standardized. Hold one today, and you'll notice the weight: heavy, substantial, real. That tactile sensation was intentional. In an era when trust was literal currency, the heft of pure gold left no room for doubt. And then there's the irony. Croesus, for all his wealth, famously misunderstood the oracle's prophecy that attacking Persia would destroy a great empire, his own. Yet while his kingdom fell, his coins endured. They outlived him, outlived empires, and became the blueprint for every gold dinar, florin, and doubloon to come. The stater's legacy isn't just in museums, it's in our wallets, our banks, our very notion of what money should be. When you swipe a credit card today, you're still playing by Croesus's rules: value, standardized and stamped, moving mountains without a single ounce of doubt. The Roman denarius of Julius Caesar didn't just jingle in purses, it shattered tradition. Struck between 49 and 44 before the Common Era, this small silver coin did something unthinkable. It bore the portrait of a living Roman, a blatant break from centuries of convention. Before Caesar, Roman coins featured gods, goddesses, or symbols of the state. But here was Caesar's own stern profile, his aging face etched in metal, crowned with the inscription, Caesar dict perpetuo, Caesar, dictator for life. This wasn't just currency, it was a calculated power grab, a visual proclamation that one man now was Rome. The audacity of this move can't be overstated. In a republic still clinging to the illusion of shared governance, putting a living ruler's face on coins was the numismatic equivalent of a crown. Every time a citizen paid for bread or a soldier received his wages, they held Caesar's likeness, a constant reminder of who held ultimate authority. And the timing, impeccable. These coins flooded the streets during his civil war against Pompey, financing armies while broadcasting his dominance. It was propaganda at its most portable, ensuring even the illiterate knew who to thank or fear. Then came the Veni Vidi Vici issues, struck after Caesar's lightning victory over Farnes's Roman II at Zela in 47 before the Common Era. These coins reduced an entire military campaign to 3 words: I came, I saw, I conquered. The message wasn't subtle. Beneath the phrase, symbols of victory trophies, captives hammered home Caesar's invincibility. For a populace weary of war, these denarii weren't just pay, they were proof of their leader's supernatural prowess. But the real genius lay in the details. Caesar's portraits evolved over time, carefully curated to reflect his desired image. Early coins showed him clean-shaven, a nod to traditional Roman masculinity. Later issues, minted closer to his assassination, revealed a gaunter face with deep lines, a visual sacrifice narrative, the leader aging under the weight of duty. Even his hairstyle, the so-called Caesarian comb-over, was immortalized in metal, turning personal vanity into a state symbol. These coins also exposed the fragility of power. After his murder on the Ides of March, denarii bearing Caesar's face became dangerous to possess under the liberator's rule, only to flood back under Augustus, who weaponized his adoptive father's image to legitimize his own reign. Today, holding one is like gripping a piece of history's hinge. The moment Rome teetered between republic and empire, all encapsulated in a silver disc no larger than a fingernail. Caesar's denarius didn't just buy allegiance, it rewrote the rules of influence, proving that money, when minted right, could bend an entire civilization to one man's will. The Eid Mar Denarius is one of history's most chilling coins, a silver confession of murder disguised as a call for freedom. Minted in 42 before the Common Era by Marcus Junius Brutus, the same man who plunged a dagger into Julius Caesar, this coin was no ordinary piece of currency. On one side, Brutus's own profile stares coolly outward, framed by the words Beaviti Imp Brutus Imperator. But the real message lies on the reverse, 2 crude daggers flanking a liberty cap with the inscription Eid Mar, shorthand for the Ides of March. This wasn't just money, it was a brazen declaration that Caesar's assassination had been a righteous act, a blow struck for the Republic. That liberty cap, a soft Phrygian hat, carried centuries of meaning. In Rome, it symbolized emancipation. Former slaves wore it upon gaining freedom. By placing it between the daggers, Brutus spun his betrayal as liberation, framing Caesar's death as Rome's deliverance from tyranny. The daggers themselves, one perhaps representing Brutus and the other his co-conspirator Cassius, were rendered with startling simplicity, their blades almost visceral in their roughness. There's no artistry here, just stark, brutal imagery, as if to say this was necessary, this was just. What makes the Eid Mar Denarius astonishing is its rarity. Unlike Caesar's mass-produced coins, Brutus minted these sparingly, likely to pay his armies during the civil war against Octavian and Mark Antony. Few survived the aftermath of his defeat. Most were melted down by the victors, determined to erase this symbolic challenge to their authority. Today, perhaps 60 exist, each one a numismatic ghost whispering of a republic's last gasp. When one surfaced at auction in 2020, it fetched over £3 million, not just for its metal but for the audacity it represents. But the coin's true power lies in its irony. Brutus, who killed Caesar to save the Republic, ended up hastening its demise. His coin, meant to celebrate liberty, became a relic of a dying ideal. Within years, Rome would be an empire, and the faces on coins wouldn't be assassins but gods in waiting. Holding an Eid Mar Denarius is like touching a crossroads. The moment one man's conviction collided with history's tide, leaving behind nothing but a silver whisper of what might have been. The Antoninianus of Emperor Philip the Arab should have been a triumphant celebration, a gleaming symbol of Rome's millennial might. Instead, this thin, debased silver coin tells a darker story, one of an empire straining under its own weight. Minted between 244 and 249 of the Common Era to mark Rome's 1000th anniversary, the coin's faded luster mirrors the economic chaos of the crisis of the 3rd century. On the surface, it's all pomp. Philip's radiate crown, a visual trick to denote double value, gleams above the inscription, Imp Philip's AVG, while the reverse often depicts exotic animals or the emperor himself presiding over the secular games, lavish spectacles meant to channel Rome's mythical past. But look closer, the silver content has dwindled to a pathetic wash, the edges crumble like dry parchment, and the once sharp designs blur into ghostly impressions. This wasn't just currency, it was a desperate illusion. Philip's reign should have been a golden age. Rome's millennium was a seismic event, a chance to reaffirm the empire's eternal destiny. The secular games, revived after centuries, featured chariot races, theatrical performances, and sacrifices to deities, a direct nod to Augustus's reign, when Rome last held the games in 17 before the Common Era. The coins advertising these games showed wolves and stags, symbols of Rome's founding myths, as if to say, we are still the heirs of Romulus, but the imagery rings hollow. By Philip's time, the treasury was bleeding. Barbarian invasions, civil wars, and plague had hollowed out the empire, and the only way to pay for the festivities was to quietly rob the coins of their real value. That radiant crown on Philip's head, a bitter joke. The Antoninus was supposed to be worth 2 denarii, but with its silver content slashed to less than 50%, it was barely worth one. The crisis wasn't just economic, it was existential. As Philip's coins circulated, so did the whispers. If Rome's money could decay, what did that mean for Rome itself? Emperors came and went with terrifying speed. Philip himself was killed by his own troops after just 5 years, and the Antoninus became a visual diary of decline. Later issues under his successors would shrink further, some so thin they cracked under pressure, yet in their own way these coins are eerily beautiful. The hurried strikes, the irregular flans, each one is a snapshot of mints working overtime to keep the illusion alive. Today, holding an Antoninus of Philip the Arab feels like touching the edge of a cliff. The designs still whisper of grandeur, but the brittle metal betrays the truth. Rome wouldn't fall for another 2 centuries, but here, in these coins, you can already sense the unraveling, a once great empire trying to buy itself more time with money that wasn't really there. Constantine the Great didn't just reshape the Roman Empire, he reinvented its money. In the year 312 of the Common Era, as civil war raged and the empire teetered on collapse, Constantine minted a coin that would outlast Rome itself, the solidus. This wasn't just another gold piece, it was a financial lifeline, struck with a purity so consistent it became the dollar of the ancient world for the next 700 years. On one side, Constantine's stern, clean-shaven profile gazes forward, crowned with a laurel wreath and the inscription, Constantin's AVG, Constantine Augustus. The reverse often features him holding a labarum, a military standard topped with a Cairo, the newly adopted symbol of Christianity. Every detail was a message. This coin didn't just represent wealth, it signaled a new era. What made the solidus revolutionary was its reliability. Previous emperors had debased their coins to fund wars or buy loyalty, eroding public trust. But Constantine's solidus was minted at 72 to the pound, a standard so strict that its weight barely fluctuated for centuries. Merchants from Alexandria to London knew that a solidus in 312 would hold the same value in 512. This stability didn't just ease trade, it propped up an empire. Soldiers could be paid in currency they trusted, taxes could be collected without dispute, and distant provinces could bind themselves to Rome through shared economic faith. The solidus also mirrored Constantine's political genius. By moving the empire's capital to Constantinople, he anchored his new coin to a new power center. The mints there churned out solidity with unwavering quality, while older cities like Rome saw their coinage decline. It was a financial sleight of hand. As the solidus became synonymous with the East, so did Constantine's vision for the empire's future. Even after the Western Empire fell in 476, Byzantine rulers kept the solidus unchanged, its gold so trusted that Arab caliphs and Viking traders hoarded it centuries later. But the real legacy of the solidus lies in its endurance. Unlike earlier coins that corroded or wore thin, these gold pieces survived in remarkable condition, many still gleaming today. That's why historians call them the dollar of the Middle Ages, a universal currency that transcended borders and time. Holding one now, you're touching the backbone of medieval finance, a thread connecting Rome's twilight to the Renaissance. The solidus didn't just stabilize an economy, it became the silent engine of history, proving that even in chaos, trust could be minted into metal. The widow's mite might be the humblest coin in antiquity, but its legacy looms larger than empires. This small bronze lepton, minted in Judea under the rule of Herod the Great or his successors, measures barely half an inch across, so tiny that a handful could easily slip through fingers. Yet its fame comes not from size or artistry, but from a single moment immortalized in the Gospels. A poor widow donating 2 of these coins to the temple treasury, an act Jesus praised as greater than the lavish gifts of the rich. That biblical story turned an ordinary mite into a universal symbol of sincerity and sacrifice, but the coin itself holds secrets far beyond its religious fame. Archaeologically, these unassuming discs are windows into everyday life in 1st century Judea. Unlike the pristine gold of emperors or the intricate silver of city-states, the widow's mite was mass-produced for the working poor. The designs are crude. One side typically bears an anchor, a holdover from Seleucid rule, or a star, while the reverse might show a wheel or a helmet, symbols stripped of their original meanings by time and repetition. The flans are irregular, the strikes often off-center, and the metal so thin that many cracked under use. But these flaws tell a truth no polished royal coin can. This was money for people grinding out lives under Roman occupation, coins that bought bread, paid taxes, and circulated in the dusty streets of Jerusalem. What's remarkable is how these mites connect to larger history. Herod the Great, infamous for his brutality and architectural grandeur, ruled a kingdom where wealth disparity was staggering. His gold coins funded palaces like Masada, while the lepton barely covered a day's wages for laborers. Yet when Herod rebuilt the Second Temple, a project meant to cement his legacy, it was mites like these that filled the coffers, donated by pilgrims who saved for years to offer even a fraction. The coin's very existence underscores the irony of power. The mighty build monuments, but the pennies of the powerless keep them running. Modern excavations have unearthed these mites by the hundreds, often in the soil around Jerusalem's Temple Mount. Some show traces of wear from countless exchanges, their edges smoothed by generations of hands. Others, found in buried hoards, hint at times of crisis, perhaps hidden during the Jewish revolt, only to be forgotten when their owners never returned. Each one is a tactile link to real people, not kings or conquerors, but farmers, merchants, and yes, widows, whose names are lost to history but whose lives are etched into these battered bronzes. Holding a widow's mite today is to touch something profoundly human. The coin doesn't glitter or impress, but it resonates. It's a relic of faith, yes, but also of endurance, proof that even the smallest objects can carry the weight of centuries. In a world obsessed with gold and grandeur, this tiny bronze whispers that value isn't always measured in metal, but in the hands that held it and the sacrifices they made. The shekel of Tyre wasn't just silver, it was sacred, minted between 125 before the Common Era and 65 of the Common Era in the Phoenician city of Tyre. This hefty shekel held a paradox. Its imagery celebrated a pagan god, yet it became the only currency acceptable for paying the temple tax in Jerusalem. On one side, the bearded face of Melkart, the Phoenician equivalent of Hercules, stares out with an air of divine authority, his name inscribed in Greek letters. The reverse shows an eagle perched on a ship's prow, a nod to Tyre's naval supremacy. To devout Jews, these symbols were idolatrous, yet every year, pilgrims scrambled to exchange their Roman denarii for these coins just to fulfill their religious duty. This was money caught between worlds, a pagan coin sanctified by necessity. Why did Jerusalem's temple accept a currency adorned with foreign gods? The answer lies in purity. Tyrian shekels were renowned for their consistent silver content, over 90% pure, making them the most reliable medium for sacred payments. Roman coins, on the other hand, bore the emperor's image, a graven idol forbidden by Jewish law, and their silver was often debased. The temple authorities had no choice. To avoid sacrilege and ensure fair value, they demanded Tyrian shekels, even if it meant turning a blind eye to Melkart's smirk. This tension exploded in one of the Bible's most dramatic moments, Jesus overturning the money changers' tables. The Gospels don't specify the coins involved, but historians agree it was likely these Tyrian shekels. Picture the scene, the temple's outer court teeming with pilgrims exchanging currencies at inflated rates, the clink of silver blending with the bleating of sacrificial animals. By attacking the money changers, Jesus wasn't just condemning greed, he was striking at a system that forced the faithful to traffic in pagan symbols to worship their own god. The irony was thick enough to choke on. A coin minted to honor Melkart had become the key to Yahweh's rituals. The coins themselves tell a story of cultural collision. Tyre, a bustling trade hub, minted these shekels primarily for commerce, not Jerusalem's temple. Yet Jewish demand was so high that Tyre kept producing them long after other cities adopted Roman currency. Some shekels even feature dates, allowing us to trace their minting to specific years, a rarity in ancient coinage. Over time, the design grew cruder, the silver slightly less pure, as if the mint masters knew their monopoly couldn't last. And it didn't. In 66 of the Common Era, the first Jewish revolt erupted, and the rebels minted their own pure silver shekels, finally free of pagan imagery. But for nearly 2 centuries, the shekel of Tyre had been the uneasy bridge between faith and finance, a coin that proved even holiness has its price. Holding one today, you're touching the very metal that fueled devotion, sparked outrage, and for a brief, charged moment, made a carpenter from Nazareth take a stand. The eagle may have flown, but its shadow lingers. The Celtic Gold Stater of the Parisii isn't just a coin. It's a burst of wild artistry frozen in metal, a defiant declaration of identity from the tribe that would one day give its name to Paris. Minted in the 2nd to 1st century before the Common Era, these shimmering discs were the currency of a people who valued symbolism as much as commerce. The design is hypnotic, a stylized horse, its body reduced to sweeping curves and spirals, with a chariot wheel floating above its back like a sunburst. The reverse often features an abstract human head, its features dissolved into geometric patterns, part face, part labyrinth. This wasn't realism, it was mysticism stamped into gold, a visual language that whispered of druids, sacred groves, and a world where the spirit and the material intertwined. The Parisii, a Gallic tribe settled along the Seine, were master traders long before Romans set foot on their land. Their staters, struck from Bohemian gold, flowed along river trade routes, paying for Baltic amber, Mediterranean wine, and British tin. But these coins were more than just facilitators of exchange. That horse motif, it wasn't merely decorative. In Celtic cosmology, the horse symbolized sovereignty, war, and the otherworld. Think of the goddess Epona, protector of steeds and warriors. By imprinting it on their currency, the Parisii weren't just advertising wealth, they were invoking divine protection for their commerce and their people. What's striking is how these coins reflect resistance. When Julius Caesar's legions marched into Gaul in the 1st century before the Common Era, the Parisii, led by their chieftain Camulogenus, joined the Great Revolt under Vercingetorix. Their status, still circulating, became silent witnesses to a culture under siege. Some historians believe the increasingly abstract designs, horses dissolving into pure pattern, were a deliberate rejection of Roman naturalism, a refusal to bend artistically even as the legions advanced. The message was clear: our money, like our identity, cannot be easily colonized, yet Rome's shadow loomed. After the fall of Alesia in 52 before the Common Era, the Parisii's coinage gradually disappeared, replaced by denarii bearing the faces of emperors. But the tribe's legacy endured. Their settlement, Lutetia, would grow into the city we now call Paris, and if you look closely at some medieval French coins, you might catch echoes of those swirling Celtic horses, a ghostly persistence of artistic rebellion. Holding a Parisii stater today is like grasping a fragment of a lost world. The gold is often worn smooth, the designs softened by centuries of touch, but the energy remains. These coins don't just connect us to an ancient economy, they're a bridge to a people who saw money not just as a tool, but as a canvas for their dreams and defiance. In their abstraction lies a truth: value isn't just measured in weight or purity, but in the stories we stamp upon it. The Parthian drachm of Mithridates I isn't just a coin, it's a silent revolution in silver, a declaration of independence stamped into metal. Minted between 171 and 138 before the Common Era, this slender drachm captures the moment when the Parthians, a nomadic tribe from the Central Asian steppes, wrested control from the crumbling Seleucid Empire and forged a new Persian powerhouse. On one side, Mithridates stares out with a thick, curled beard and a stern brow, his hair bundled in the traditional Parthian style beneath a diadem, a king's band tied at the back with fluttering ribbons. But it's the reverse that steals the show: an archer seated casually on a throne, bow in one hand, arrow in the other, as if daring any challenger to step closer. This wasn't just royalty, this was a ruler who could strike from a distance, a visual metaphor for Parthia's deadly horse archers and their guerrilla tactics that would later humiliate Rome. Mithridates knew the power of imagery. The bearded portrait wasn't just a likeness, it was a deliberate echo of Achaemenid kings like Darius, consciously linking his rule to Persia's golden age before Alexander's conquests. The message was clear: the Greeks' time was over and the true heirs of Cyrus had returned. Even the inscription, in Greek for political convenience but with the Parthian title, King of Kings, played both sides, appealing to Hellenistic subjects while asserting Persian supremacy. That archer, though, that's where the drachm truly shines. Unlike the stiff, formal portraits of Greco-Bactrian or Roman coins, this figure exudes relaxed confidence. He isn't standing in military triumph or sacrificing to gods. He's lounging almost insolently, as if the throne is merely a rest stop between battles. Parthian warfare revolved around their legendary horse archers who could loose arrows backward at full gallop, the infamous Parthian shot. By placing this image on his currency, Mithridates wasn't just celebrating a military tactic, he was advertising Parthia's entire strategy: mobile, unpredictable, and lethal. The drachm's circulation tells its own story. These coins traveled along the Silk Road, paying for Chinese silk and Indian spices, their silver content so trusted that merchants from Babylon to the Tarim Basin accepted them without question. Later, when Crassus marched his legions into Parthia in 53 before the Common Era, it was these same archers funded by these same drachms who annihilated his army at Carrhae, leaving Rome's golden eagle standards in Parthian hands. Holding one today, you're touching the currency of defiance. The silver is often worn thin, the archer's bow barely visible, but the audacity remains. This little coin didn't just buy goods, it bought an empire, one galloping horse and whizzing arrow at a time. Mithridates might be dust now, but his drachm still whispers a warning. Some rulers build with stone and law. Others conquer from the saddle. The Kushan gold dinar of Kanishka isn't just a coin, it's a shimmering crossroads of civilizations, a pocket-sized testament to the cultural whirlwind of the Silk Road. Struck between 127 and 150 of the Common Era, these radiant dinars capture the Kushan Empire at its zenith, where Greek gods rubbed shoulders with Hindu deities and the Buddha himself appeared on currency for the first time. Hold one in your hand and you'll see Kanishka the Great stern portrait, his heavy coat draped in the nomadic style of Central Asia, a halo of flames flickering around his head, a nod to Persian divine kingship. But flip it over and the real magic begins, a pantheon of figures from the Hindu god Shiva with his trident to the Buddha seated in meditation, their names carefully inscribed in Greek letters. This wasn't just money, it was a spiritual melting pot minted in gold. Kanishka's empire stretched from modern-day Afghanistan to northern India, straddling the Silk Road like a colossus. His coins became the ultimate reflection of that position. Economic instruments, yes, but also tools of soft power. By featuring Zeus alongside Ahura Mazda or the Iranian sun god Mithra beside the Buddha, Kanishka sent a clear message: in his realm, every faith had a place. The Greek script lingering on the coins wasn't just decorative. It was a bridge to the Hellenistic past, a clever way to reassure Greek-speaking traders that Kushan rule honored old connections even as it embraced new influences. The Buddha's appearance on these dinars is particularly groundbreaking. Before Kanishka, Buddhist art avoided depicting the Buddha directly, relying instead on symbols like footprints or empty thrones. But here he is calm, cross-legged, his hands in the teaching mudra, making this coin the first known portrait of the Buddha in human form. For pilgrims and merchants traveling Kushan's highways, these dinars weren't just payment, they were portable sermons spreading Buddhist iconography farther than any monk could walk. Yet the real genius lies in the synthesis. Kanishka didn't just slap different gods onto coins and call it unity. The artistry fused styles seamlessly: Greek realism in the drapery, Indian fluidity in the poses, Persian grandeur in the symbols of power. Even the weight standard was a hybrid, blending Roman aureus measurements with local traditions. When a Sogdian merchant handed over a Kushan dinar in Chang'an or a Gandharan artist used one to buy pigments, they weren't just trading gold, they were exchanging a vision of the world where differences didn't divide but enriched. Today, these dinars are time machines. The gold still gleams, the inscriptions still legible, carrying whispers of caravans and cosmopolitan cities long vanished. To hold one is to grasp the heartbeat of an empire that didn't just tolerate diversity but celebrated it, stamping its openness into every coin. In an age of walls and divisions, Kanishka's dinar reminds us that the Silk Road wasn't just about silk, it was about souls meeting, merging, and minting something new. The Bactrian Tetradrachm of Eucratides I isn't just a coin, it's a thunderclap of audacity frozen in silver. Minted between 171 and 145 before the Common Era in the rugged heart of Afghanistan, this colossal piece, weighing as much as 20 standard staters, was the ancient world's equivalent of a billboard screaming, "I am king." On one side, Eucratides stares out with piercing eyes, his helmet crested with the horns of a bull and adorned with intricate filigree, the Greek inscription, Beta, Alpha Sigma, Ota Lambda Epsilono, Mega Sigma Mu Epsilon, Gamma Alpha Lambda Omicron Upsilon Epsilon Upsilon, Kappa Rho Alpha Tau I, Ota Delta Omicron Upsilon, Basilios Megalou Eucratidu, declaring him the great king. But the real spectacle unfolds on the reverse, the Dioscuri twins, Castor and Pollux, charging full tilt on horseback, their cloaks billowing behind them like banners in the wind. This wasn't just currency, it was a declaration that Greek kingship could thrive even at the edge of the known world. Eucratides ruled Bactria, a Hellenistic kingdom so remote that later Roman historians treated it like a legend. Nestled between the Hindu Kush and the Oxus River, this was where Alexander the Great's legacy clung stubbornly to life long after his empire fractured. The tetradrachm's sheer size, some specimens measure over 35 millimeters, was a flex. No other Hellenistic monarch dared strike coins this massive, but Eucratides needed to make a statement. His reign was a roller coaster of betrayals and battles, from surviving a siege by the Seleucid king Demetrius to allegedly being murdered by his own son. In a land where power shifted like desert sands, this coin was his anchor, a tangible proof of authority meant to awe subjects and rivals alike. The Dioscuri motif wasn't just artistic flair. In Greek mythology, the twin horsemen were patrons of travelers and warriors, perfect symbols for a kingdom straddling trade routes between India, Persia, and China. But there's a deeper layer. The charging horsemen also echoed the nomads of the steppes, the Scythians and Yuezhi, who loomed on Bactria's borders. By marrying Greek iconography with Central Asian dynamism, Eucratides crafted a visual language that spoke to both his Hellenistic elite and the diverse peoples under his rule. It was diplomacy in metal, a way to say, "I am of Greece, but I rule here." What makes these tetradrachms astonishing is their rarity. Most were melted down after Eucratides' fall, their silver recycled by successors eager to erase his memory. The few survivors, often unearthed in hoards buried during invasions, are marvels of Hellenistic artistry. The portraits capture Eucratides with startling realism, his furrowed brow, the faint sneer of his lips, while the Dioscuri's horses seem to leap off the flan. Holding one is like gripping a relic from a lost world, where Greek culture flickered brilliantly before being swallowed by the deserts and dynasties of Asia. Yet the coin's true legacy is its irony. Eucratides dreamed of eternal glory, but his kingdom crumbled within decades. His massive tetradrachms, meant to cement his name in history, became tombstones for a civilization that once blended East and West with breathtaking boldness. Today, they're not just artifacts, they're mirrors reflecting the fragility of empires and the enduring power of a king who dared to strike his ambition in silver, colossal and unapologetic. Long before Indian coinage bore the faces of kings or gods, there was something far more mysterious: crude pieces of silver hammered into irregular shapes, their surfaces studded with cryptic symbols punched into the metal like secret codes. These were the punch-marked coins of ancient India, circulating as early as the 6th century before the Common Era, and they represent one of humanity's first experiments with standardized currency. Unlike the finely struck coins of Greece or Persia, these were raw, almost primal in their design: silver bits stamped with punches depicting suns, animals, geometric shapes, and symbols whose meanings have baffled historians for centuries. Yet hidden in their simplicity lies a revolution. The moment India's Mahajana potters, those mighty early republics and kingdoms, moved beyond barter and into an economy of trust sealed in metal. What makes these coins fascinating isn't just their age, it's their language. Without inscriptions or rulers' portraits, the punch marks spoke in a visual shorthand. A crescent moon might represent a local deity, an elephant could signify a powerful dynasty, and a 6-armed wheel might echo the Dharma chakra of Buddhist teachings. Some theories suggest these symbols acted as territorial markers, each punch added by merchant guilds or city-states to certify weight and purity as the coins changed hands across the subcontinent's sprawling trade networks. Imagine a marketplace in Magadha or Kashi, where a trader would squint at these symbols like a shopper checking a brand today, trusting not a king's face but a shared system of marks. The craftsmanship itself was ingenious. Artisans would heat silver, cut it into rough rectangles or squares, then hammer it with individual punches, sometimes as few as 1 or 2, others crammed with 5 or 6 overlapping marks. The randomness wasn't carelessness, it was practicality. Unlike Western mints obsessed with uniformity, India's early coins embraced flexibility. A coin might gain additional punches as it traveled farther, each new mark reinforcing its validity like a chain of signatures on a contract. Ancient texts like the Arthashastra Kautilya's treatise on statecraft hint at how these coins were policed. Counterfeiters faced gruesome punishments, and officials called Rupadashaka, literally form inspectors, tested coins for purity by listening to their ring or examining their sheen. The very existence of such roles proves how vital these humble silver pieces were to India's first urban boom, funding everything from Mauryan armies to Buddhist monasteries. But perhaps their greatest legacy is their endurance. While empires rose and fell, punch-marked coins remained in use for nearly 500 years, outlasting kings and even the shift to die-struck coinage. Today, when you hold one, you're not just touching money, you're holding a relic from the dawn of Indian economics, a time when trust wasn't etched in words, but in punches that whispered across centuries. The Liang coin didn't just jingle in ancient pockets, it echoed the iron will of China's first emperor. When Qin Shi Huang unified the warring states in 221 before the Common Era, he didn't stop at conquering armies or burning books, he reshaped money itself. These round coins with signature square holes were more than currency. They were physical manifestations of imperial order, replacing the chaotic assortment of spade, knife, and shell monies used across rival kingdoms. The design was deceptively simple, sturdy bronze, the weight standardized to half a liang, about 7.5 grams, with the characters Chinese letter, Ban Liang declaring its value. But that central square hole, pure genius. It allowed coins to be threaded onto strings in groups of 1,000 called guan, an ancient solution to carrying what would have been impossibly heavy stacks of metal. Before the Ban Liang, currency in China was as fractured as the states themselves. Kai used knife-shaped coins resembling miniature blades, Chu traded gold plaques stamped with seals, and Yan circulated bronze spades that could almost till soil. This patchwork system stifled trade and fed regional rivalries. Qin Shi Huang's solution was characteristically ruthless: outlaw all other forms of money and enforce the Ban Liang nationwide. The square hole wasn't just practical, it symbolized earth complementing heaven, the round coin, reflecting the emperor's obsession with cosmic order. Even the inscription style mattered. The sharp, angular script matched Qin's official seal script, turning every coin into a tiny decree stamped in metal. Minting these coins revealed the Qin state's mechanical brilliance. Craftsmen poured molten bronze into clay molds arranged like honeycombs, with channels allowing multiple coins to be cast simultaneously. The square holes were formed by placing clay cores in the molds, a technique so efficient it remained unchanged for centuries, but standardization came at a cost. Surviving Ban Liangs show wild variations in weight, proof that local mints often cut corners. Some specimens are barely half the official weight, their edges crudely filed down. This wasn't just cheating, it was the first tremors of an empire straining under its own ambitions. What makes these coins extraordinary is their afterlife. Though the Qin dynasty collapsed in 206 before the Common Era, the Ban Liang's design became the blueprint for Chinese coinage for the next 2,000 years. Later dynasties tweaked the weight and calligraphy, but kept the round shape and square hole, a numismatic tradition unbroken until the 19th century. Even today, that iconic hole persists in Chinese charms and commemorative coins, a silent tribute to Qin Shi Huang's vision. Holding a Ban Liang is to touch the birth of imperial China. The bronze may be corroded, the characters worn smooth, but the legacy remains sharp. These coins didn't just buy goods, they bought unity, threading scattered kingdoms into a single economic fabric. In their imperfect circles, you can still trace the fingerprints of history's most relentless unifier. The Nabataean silver drachm from the 1st century of the Common Era isn't just a coin, it's a desert mirage made real, a glimpse into the hidden wealth of Petra, the rose-red city carved from cliffs. On one side, King Aretas IV stares out with a curled beard and an expression of quiet authority, his name inscribed in Nabataean script, that flowing, almost musical alphabet used by the nomadic traders who turned this arid kingdom into an economic powerhouse. Flip the coin and there she is, Atargates, the Syrian goddess of fertility and water, seated on a throne with a scepter in one hand and a bowl in the other, her divine presence stamped onto the currency of a people who knew the value of every drop. This little drachm holds the scent of frankincense and myrrh. The Nabataeans, once wandering desert tribes, built their fortune on the spice trade, controlling caravan routes that stretched from southern Arabia to the Mediterranean. Their coins weren't just for local use, they oiled the gears of long-distance commerce, paying for silks from China, spices from India, and the loyalty of the nomadic tribes who guarded their wells. Arators, whose reign overlapped with Emperor Augustus and Herod the Great, understood the power of imagery. By placing Atargates on his coins, he wasn't just honoring a goddess, he was sending a message to Rome. The Nabataeans may have been clients of the empire, but their culture, their gods, their very identity remained unbroken. The drachm's design reveals this delicate dance between independence and adaptation. The weight standard mimics Greek tetradrachms, a nod to the Hellenistic world the Nabataeans traded with, but the artistry is distinctly Arabian. Atargates' throne resembles those found in Petra's rock-cut tombs, and the inscriptions weave Nabataean letters with Greek monograms, a bilingual wink to the cosmopolitan merchants who'd handled these coins. Even the silver itself tells a story. Unlike neighboring kingdoms that relied on Roman bullion, the Nabataeans struck their drachms from homegrown metal, likely mined from the Wadi Araba or traded from the Hijaz. What makes these coins haunting is their historical twilight. Arators ruled during Petra's Golden Age, when its treasury overflowed with tariffs from camel caravans laden with incense. But within a century of his death, Rome would annex Nabataea, redirecting the spice trade to sea routes. The drachms grew scarcer, their silver thinner, until they vanished like the kingdom itself. Today, when you hold one, you're touching the last gleam of a civilization that turned sand into gold. A people who etched their gods onto coins because they knew empires fade but legends endure. The Sasanian drachm of Shapur I doesn't just gleam with silver, it burns with the fire of Persian revival. Minted between 240 and 270 of the Common Era, this coin is a masterclass in imperial propaganda where every curve and symbol screams defiance. On the obverse, Shapur stares out with an otherworldly intensity, his crown ablaze with stylized flames, a direct nod to his Zoroastrian faith where fire represented divine truth and kingship. But this isn't just any crown. Its layered tiers mimic the sacred fire altars of Persia, a visual proclamation that Shapur wasn't merely a ruler, he was Ahura Mazda's chosen, a monarch anointed by the cosmos itself. Turn the coin over and the message grows even bolder. A Zoroastrian fire temple, its altar tended by two attendants, with flames licking upward as if to singe the fingers of any who doubted Sasanian might. This coin arrived at a seismic moment. Shapur's reign saw the Sasanian Empire rise from the ashes of Parthian rule, and his drachms were minted not just to pay soldiers but to rewrite history. The fire temple reverse wasn't merely religious imagery, it was a slap to Rome's face. Just years earlier, Shapur had humiliated Emperor Valerian at the Battle of Edessa, capturing him alive and allegedly using the defeated emperor as a footstool. The drachms circulating afterward carried no explicit mention of this triumph, but they didn't need to. That fire temple, unchallenged and eternal, said it all. Persia's divine mandate had roasted Roman arrogance alive. What's fascinating is how these coins fed a cultural revolution. Previous Parthian coins had aped Greek styles with rulers in Hellenistic poses. Shapur's drachms rejected that entirely. The portraits are rigid, hieratic, their eyes boring into the viewer with an almost hypnotic focus. This was art as ideology, a deliberate revival of Achaemenid aesthetics to distance Persia from Greco-Roman influence. Even the script mattered. The Middle Persian inscriptions, crisp and angular, replaced the wispy Greek of old coins, a linguistic reclaiming of identity. Yet for all their symbolism, these drachms were also pragmatic. Their weight and silver content were scrupulously consistent, making them the dollar of the Silk Road. Traders from Samarkand to Alexandria trusted their purity, and Shapur knew that economic reliability could cement loyalty better than any battle. Some drachms even traveled as far as Viking hordes centuries later, their fire altars blinking up from Scandinavian soil like embers of a forgotten inferno. Holding one today, you're handling a relic of calculated brilliance. The silver may be tarnished, the edges nicked from centuries of trade, but the message remains untarnished. In an age where empires rose and fell on swords and slogans, Shapur understood that true power also needed to be struck in metal silver that didn't just jingle but preached. The Ostrogothic Tremissus of Theodoric the Great isn't just a gold coin, it's a cultural tightrope walk, a shimmering contradiction struck between Roman tradition and Gothic identity. Minted between the late 5th and early 6th century of the Common Era, these small but weighty coins carried the face of an empire that had technically fallen, yet refused to disappear. On one side, Theodoric stares out in the unmistakable style of a Roman emperor, clean-shaven, laureate-crowned, his profile echoing centuries of imperial portraits from Augustus to Justinian. But look closer, the inscription around him, though Latin at first glance, hides a Germanic twist, letters clumsily spaced, some reversed, as if the engraver's hand still itched to carve runes instead of Roman script. This wasn't imitation, it was appropriation, a barbarian king dressing his power in the fading prestige of a civilization he'd conquered but couldn't quite replace. Theodoric's Tremissus tells the story of an era caught between worlds. After deposing Odoacer in 493, the Ostrogothic king ruled Italy not as a destroyer but as a custodian of Roman glory. His coins mirrored this delicate dance. The reverse often featured a winged Victoria, the Roman goddess of victory, yet her pose was stiff, almost wooden, her wings more akin to those on Germanic brooches than classical sculptures. The metal itself whispered of compromise, gold mined from lands once patrolled by legions, now struck by Gothic mints in Ravenna, Rome, and Milan. What makes these coins extraordinary is their sheer audacity. Theodoric, raised as a hostage in Constantinople, understood the power of symbols. By retaining Roman imagery, he reassured Italian elites that civilization hadn't collapsed. But the subtle errors, misplaced letters, uneven strikes hinted at a deeper truth. This was a new order, still learning the old rules. Some tremisses even bear monograms, cryptic combinations of letters that scholars believe represent Gothic officials or mints, a bureaucratic innovation grafted onto Roman frameworks. The Tremissus also reveals the limits of Theodoric's synthesis. Later issues grow cruder, the portraits flattening into near abstractions, the Latin devolving into gibberish. It's as if the Ostrogothic identity, patient for decades, finally seeped through the imperial veneer. By the time Justinian's armies reconquered Italy in the 600s, these coins had become relics of a fleeting experiment, a kingdom that tried to be both Gothic and Roman, and in the end was neither. Yet for a brief moment, Theodoric's gold bridged two worlds. Holding one today, you're touching the last glow of Rome's sunset and the first spark of medieval Europe's dawn. The gold is often worn smooth, Theodoric's features softened by time, but the tension remains. These coins didn't just buy bread or pay soldiers, they performed identity, proving that even the mightiest conquerors could wear their borrowed robes only so long before the seams began to show. The Merovingian trines gleams like a rough-cut gem from the fog of Europe's dark ages, a gold coin that feels equal parts Roman relic and medieval omen. Struck between the 6th and 7th centuries of the Common Era, these small, thick discs were the currency of the Merovingian Franks, the dynasty of long-haired kings who carved a kingdom from the ruins of Roman Gaul. On one side, a crude bust stares out, its features so abstract they could be a child's sketch of authority. 2 dots for eyes, a single line for a mouth, and a halo of barely legible Latin letters circling the edge like a fading echo. Flip it over, and the real signature of the age appears: a cross, sometimes flanked by pellets or primitive symbols, hammered into the gold with blunt force. This wasn't just money, it was a declaration that Rome's sun had set and a new world was rising in its twilight. What makes the trines fascinating isn't its artistry, it's the story of collapse and reinvention written in its uneven strikes. The Merovingians, descendants of Clovis, inherited Roman mints but not their precision. Gone were the lifelike profiles of emperors. Here, rulers were reduced to ghostly outlines, their power asserted not through realism but through the sheer weight of gold. The crosses, though, tell a deeper tale. These weren't merely religious symbols, they were political branding. Clovis's conversion to Christianity in 496 had tied the Franks' legitimacy to the church, and by stamping crosses on their coins, Merovingian kings fused divine authority with cold, hard currency. A trines in your palm was proof that God favored Frankish rule, or at least that's what the kings wanted you to believe, yet the trines also exposes the fragmentation of the era. Unlike the centralized coinage of Rome, these pieces were minted locally, often by moneyers whose names appear garbled or misspelled on the flans. Some coins bear the names of bishops or abbots, revealing how monasteries became economic hubs in a world where royal control was patchy at best. The gold itself was often recycled melted-down jewelry, Roman solidi, or even loot from conquered neighbors. Hold a trines today, and you might be clutching a Visigoth's armband or a Byzantine merchant's savings, repurposed by a Frankish mint master who cared more about weight than provenance. The design's crudeness is deceptive. Those blobby busts and lopsided crosses weren't failures of skill, they were adaptations to chaos. With roads crumbling and trade networks shrinking, a coin's value hinged on trust in its metal, not its imagery. A trines was accepted because it felt right. Its heft and gold content mattered more than whether the king's nose was properly proportioned. This was money for a world learning to function without Rome's bureaucratic machinery, where a local lord's guarantee carried more weight than an emperor's portrait. By the 8th century, the trines would fade, replaced by the silver deniers of Charlemagne's Renaissance. But in its rough edges and hybrid symbolism, you can trace the birth pangs of medieval Europe. This coin didn't just buy cattle or pay ransoms. It marked the moment when Europe stopped pretending to be Roman and began groping towards something new, a fractured, fervent, and fiercely independent future, struck in gold one clumsy hammer blow at a time. The Umayyad gold dinar didn't just circulate, it announced a revolution. Struck in the year 77 of the Islamic calendar, around 696 of the Common Era under Caliph Abd al-Malik, this coin marked the moment Islam defined its visual identity, breaking sharply with the past. Gone were the portraits of emperors and gods that had dominated currency for a millennium. In their place stood stark, bold Arabic script proclaiming the Shahada. There is no God but Allah alone, a declaration so powerful it transformed money into a missionary. The reverse continued the theme, quoting Quranic verses that rejected the Trinity, a direct challenge to the Byzantine solidi this dinar was meant to replace. This wasn't just new coinage, it was a theological statement minted in gold, declaring that the caliphate's sovereignty came not from men but from divine command. Abd al-Malik's dinar was as much about politics as piety. For decades, the young Islamic state had relied on Byzantine and Sasanian coins, their foreign imagery an awkward fit for a civilization asserting its independence. The caliph's solution was radical, a complete overhaul standardizing weight, design, and language across the empire's mints from Damascus to North Africa. The dinar's weight matched the Roman solidus, a deliberate choice to ease trade, but its aesthetics were a clean rupture. No crosses, no fire temples, just the unadorned word of God. Even the dating system changed, marking years from the Hera rather than the reign of rulers, a subtle jab at the cult of imperial personality. The abolition of human imagery wasn't just religious, it was brilliant branding. In a realm stretching from Spain to Sind, where converts spoke dozens of languages, text became the universal visual language. A Berber trader in Tanya and a Persian scribe in Baghdad could both read the dinar's message, reinforcing unity under Islam. The coins also served as early propaganda. By inscribing "Muhammad is the messenger of Allah" alongside the caliph's name, Abd al-Malik tied his authority directly to the prophet, sidelining rival claimants like Ibn al-Zubayr. Yet for all its innovation, the dinar's practicality ensured its survival. The gold purity was scrupulously maintained, often above 96%, making it the trusted currency of Mediterranean trade for centuries. Venetian merchants, Crusader knights, and even Viking hordes coveted these coins, their Arabic script waving like a flag in foreign markets. Modern historians see Abd al-Malik's reform as the birth of Islamic art's aniconic tradition. But in its time, it was something simpler, money that didn't just buy goods but bought into an idea. Holding one today, you're touching the blueprint for 1,000 years of Islamic coinage. The gold may be nicked from centuries of exchange, the letters softened by countless hands, but the boldness remains. In a single stroke, the Umayyad dinar did what armies couldn't. It made faith tangible, one gleaming, word-filled disc at a time. The Byzantine solidus of Justinian I didn't just glitter, it governed. Minted from 527 to 565 of the Common Era, these gold coins were the lifeblood of an empire stretching from Spain to Syria, their design so unchanging that a solidus from Justinian's early reign was virtually indistinguishable from one struck decades later. On one side, Christ Pantocrator gazes forward with solemn authority, his right hand raised in blessing, the left clutching a jeweled gospel. This wasn't just a religious image, it was a declaration. By placing Christ above his own portrait, Justinian wove divine legitimacy into every transaction, reminding holders that Byzantium's power came not just from armies but from heaven itself. The reverse drives the point home, a standing angel gripping a globus cruciger, the orb and cross symbolizing universal dominion, with the inscription Victoria Avc celebrating the victories of the Augusti. That extra G wasn't a typo, it acknowledged Justinian's co-rulers past and future, binding his rule to an unbroken chain of divine mandate. What made the solidus extraordinary was its endurance. While empires rose and fell, this coin remained the dollar of the medieval world for over 700 years, its weight and purity so consistent that Arab caliphs and Viking warlords hoarded it centuries after Justinian's death. The secret lay in Byzantine discipline. Each solidus contained 4.5 grams of nearly pure gold, struck at 72 coins to the Roman pound, a standard maintained with fanatical precision. Merchants from Carthage to Canton knew they could trust a solidus's value implicitly, making it the preferred currency for everything from silk shipments to mercenary pay. A Lombard king might distrust Constantinople's politics, but he'd never question its gold. Justinian's choice of Christ Pantocrator was deliberate. Earlier Byzantine emperors had placed their own portraits on coins, but by the 6th century, the empire's identity had shifted. After surviving riots, plagues, and near collapse, Justinian framed his reign as a divine restoration. The Pantocrator image, with its fusion of human and heavenly authority, mirrored his grand projects, the reconquest of Italy, the codification of Roman law, and the construction of Hagia Sophia. Every solidus was a miniature ambassador, circulating his vision of a Christian Roman Empire reborn. Yet the solidus's true power lay in its adaptability. As the Western Roman Empire fragmented, these coins became the glue holding Mediterranean trade together. Syriac merchants used them to buy Indian spices, Scandinavian traders exchanged them for Frankish timber, and Coptic churches stockpiled them as offerings. Even Islamic states, once they conquered Byzantine territories, initially kept minting solidi, simply replacing the cross with the Shahada, proof of its irreplaceable economic role. Holding one today, you're touching more than gold. The surfaces may be worn smooth by countless hands, Christ's features softened by time, but the legacy is indelible. This coin didn't just fund an empire, it became the yardstick of value for civilizations that outlived Byzantium itself, a golden thread stitching together the medieval world, one unshakable standard at a time. The Visigothic Tremises is a coin that feels like history caught mid-transformation, a flickering snapshot of a kingdom straddling two worlds. Minted in Hispania between the 6th and 8th centuries of the Common Era, these small gold coins carry the ghostly imprint of Roman tradition twisted by Germanic hands. On one side, a ruler's profile stares out, but something's off. The features are stretched, the nose elongated, the eyes hollowed into crude dots, as if the die cutter had only heard descriptions of imperial portraiture. The Latin inscriptions, though legible, often stumble with misplaced letters or awkward spacing, like a student copying a language they don't fully speak. Yet this wasn't incompetence, it was reinvention. The Visigoths, having carved a kingdom from Rome's carcass, were grappling with a dilemma: how to mint authority when the old symbols no longer fit, but nothing new had fully taken their place. These tremises weren't just currency, they were identity experiments. The designs borrowed heavily from Byzantine solidi, the gold standard of Mediterranean trade, but injected with Germanic flair. Crosses appeared prominently, reflecting the Visigoths' conversion to Catholicism under King Record in 589, a political masterstroke that united Hispano-Roman and Gothic elites. Yet the execution was often idiosyncratic. Some coins draped rulers in togas they'd never wear, others crammed Christian symbols beside pagan-inspired geometric patterns. The tension was palpable, a people trying to rebrand themselves as Rome's heirs while quietly asserting their own aesthetic. Economic pragmatism shaped these coins as much as cultural pride. The tremesis, worth a third of a gold solidus, was perfectly sized for daily transactions in a decentralized kingdom. Unlike the Byzantine mint's mechanical precision, Visigothic coins were struck by regional workshops, leading to wild variations. A tremesis from Toledo might bear a nearly coherent portrait, while one from Narbonne could resemble a child's charcoal sketch. This wasn't chaos, it was adaptation. In a realm where local dukes held real power, uniformity mattered less than trust in the gold itself. The real tragedy of these coins lies in their twilight. By the early 8th century, Visigothic rule was crumbling under infighting and Moorish invasions. The last tremises, minted as Muslim armies crossed the Strait of Gibraltar, are heartbreakingly crude, the portraits reduced to ghostly smudges, the inscriptions barely legible. Yet even in their decline, they whispered of resilience. Some hoards buried during the invasion contained tremises alongside fresh Umayyad dinars, as if their owners hoped the old money might one day circulate again. Today, these coins are more than artifacts, they're metaphors. Holding a Visigothic tremesis is like touching a frayed thread between antiquity and the Middle Ages, a moment when kings still posed as emperors, but the masks were slipping. The gold endures, but the faces are fading, reminding us that even the mightiest kingdoms are just caretakers of the symbols they borrow. The Anglo-Saxon Sceat might be small enough to hide in your palm, but it carries the weight of an entire era in its silver curves. These tiny coins, no larger than a modern dime and minted between the 7th and 8th centuries of the Common Era, are like cryptic puzzle pieces from England's shadowy past. Struck during the tumultuous period when Viking longships first darkened British shores and kingdoms like Mercia and Wessex rose to power, Sceats weren't just currency, they were miniature canvases of cultural collision. Unlike the orderly Roman denarii or the pious Byzantine solidi, these coins burst with abstract animal designs, coiled serpents, stylized eagles with beak-like curves, and creatures so distorted they seem pulled from a dream. Some bear runic letters or geometric patterns, their meanings lost to time, while others feature human faces so crude they border on the grotesque. This wasn't careless craftsmanship, it was a deliberate aesthetic, a visual language straddling pagan symbolism and emerging Christian identity. What makes Sceats fascinating is their mystery. Unlike later Anglo-Saxon coins stamped with kings' names, most Sceats are anonymous, their origins tied to regional munayas or trading hubs rather than central authority. The designs vary wildly. A Mercian Sceat might feature a fantastical bird with elongated wings, while one from Kent shows a wolf-like beast mid-leap. Scholars still debate whether these animals represent totemic clan symbols, Norse mythological figures, or simply the whims of itinerant die-cutters. The ambiguity is part of their charm. These coins circulated in a world where the line between Saxon, Celt, and Viking blurred daily, and their imagery reflects that fluidity. A single Sceat found in York might bear a design echoing Scandinavian art, while another unearthed in London hints at Frankish influences, proving trade routes were as alive in metal as they were in ink on medieval maps. The Sceat's role in daily life was just as dynamic. These weren't coins for buying castles or crowns. They were the small change of early medieval England, used to purchase loaves of bread, lengths of wool, or a night's lodging at a riverside inn. Their lightweight silver made them ideal for local commerce, and hoards discovered near coastal towns suggest they traveled with merchants navigating the North Sea's treacherous waters. Some Sceats even show evidence of pecking, tiny test cuts made by skeptical traders checking for plated forgeries, a silent testament to the cutthroat pragmatism of Dark Age markets. But perhaps the Sceat's greatest legacy is its glimpse into political transformation. As the 7th century gave way to the 8th, the chaotic variety of designs began to standardize, particularly under Mercian kings like Offa. The coiled beasts and cryptic runes gradually gave way to crosses and Latin inscriptions, mirroring England's slow march toward centralized kingdoms and Christian orthodoxy. By the time the silver penny fully replaced the Sceat in the late 8th century, England's coinage had shed its pagan skin, just as its rulers had traded tribal loyalty for crowns. Holding a Sceat today is like touching a seed from which England grew. The silver is often blackened by centuries in the soil, the designs worn smooth by countless hands, but the energy remained. These coins didn't just buy goods, they bought a new world, one cryptic creature and contested border at a time. In their uneven strikes and enigmatic animals, you can almost hear the whispers of a land finding its voice, hammered into shape just like the metal itself. The Samanid dirham didn't just cross borders, it rewrote the map of medieval trade, turning silver into a language everyone understood. Struck in the bustling mints of Bukhara and Samarkand between the 9th and 10th centuries of the Common Era, these high-purity silver coins became the unexpected backbone of economies from the Oxus River to the fjords of Scandinavia. On one side, the stark, angular Kufic script declares the unity of God in austere beauty. La ilaha illa Allah, there is no deity but Allah. The reverse names the Abbasid Caliph, a nod to the Samanids' nominal allegiance, but the real power lay in the metal itself. Weighing around 3 grams of nearly pure silver, these dirhams were so trusted that Viking traders would sooner bite one to test its purity than question the faith of the rulers who minted them. What's astonishing is how far these coins traveled. Hoards unearthed in Sweden, Denmark, and even Iceland overflow with Samanid dirhams, their edges often nicked from being hacked into smaller pieces, a practice called hack silver, that turned them into modular currency for every transaction, from buying a goat to paying a mercenary's wages. The Vikings didn't care about the Arabic inscriptions, they cared about the weight and the ring of the silver. To them, these coins were raw material, melted down into arm rings or traded as is along river routes that stretched from the Caspian Sea to the Baltic. A dirham minted in the shadow of the Pamir Mountains might end up gracing a Norse chieftain's burial in Uppsala. its journey tracing the veins of a globalized medieval economy. The Samanids, Persian-speaking rulers who revitalized Central Asia after the Arab conquests, never intended their coins to become a Viking obsession. Their goal was simpler: to fund a cultural renaissance. Under their rule, cities like Nishapur and Herat became crucibles of art and science, and the Durham's elegant Kufic calligraphy mirrored the era's intellectual flourishing. The coin's standardized weight, meticulously maintained, fueled Silk Road commerce, paying for Chinese paper, Indian spices, and Turkic horses. Yet history has a way of subverting intentions. As the Samanid bureaucracy kept mints humming, their dirhams slipped into the saddlebags of Radhanite Jewish merchants and the holds of Rus traders, who funneled them northward into Viking hands. The dirham's design reveals layers of political nuance. While the inscriptions honor the distant Abbasid caliph in Baghdad, the Samanids quietly asserted independence through mint names and occasional epithets like Al-Muwafaq, the successful, a title bestowed by no one but themselves. The Kufic script, though uniform to untrained eyes, harbors subtle flourishes that distinguished Samarkand's coins from those of Balkh, like medieval watermarks. Even the dies were works of art, carved by calligraphers whose blades turned Quranic verses into visual incantations, but the real magic lies in the dirham's afterlife. In Viking markets where Allah's name echoed unintelligibly, these coins became tokens of an interconnected world. Some were pierced and worn as pendants, transforming currency into talismans. Others bear runic graffiti, Norse letters scratched beside Arabic, as if their owners tried to claim them through language. A handful even appear in Icelandic sagas, where silver, Eastern coins buy loyalty or revenge. Holding a Samanid dirham today is to grasp a paradox, a coin steeped in Islamic piety that became the lifeblood of pagan trade networks. Its silver gleam bridges deserts and frozen seas, reminding us that value, once stamped into metal, speaks louder than borders or belief. The Kufic script may fade, the edges may soften, but the story remains a testament to the strange alchemy of trust that turns mere money into a force that shapes civilizations. The silver penny of Sceat the Great isn't just a coin, it's a cultural handshake struck in metal, a tiny testament to one of history's most surprising transformations. Minted between 1016 and 1035 of the Common Era, these coins capture the moment a Viking warlord became a Christian king, his rule stretching from the fjords of Denmark to the rolling hills of Wessex. On one side, Sceat stares out with regal composure, his crowned head framed by a cross and the Latin inscription, Sceat Rex Anglia, a Sceat, King of the English. But turn it over and the Viking roots show through, a swirling pattern of crosses and knots, sometimes accompanied by the name of a Danish munaya in runic letters. This wasn't just currency, it was a balancing act, a way for a conqueror to say, I am both yours and mine. Sceat understood the power of symbols. Fresh from seizing England's throne after years of brutal campaigning, he faced a delicate task: how to rule a Christian Anglo-Saxon populace while keeping his Norse followers loyal. His pennies became the perfect propaganda. The crosses broadcast his piety to church leaders and subjects, proving he wasn't just another pagan raider. Yet the intricate knotwork designs and occasional runic signatures whispered to his Danish retainers that their king hadn't forgotten his heritage. Even the weight standard was strategic. Sceat kept the penny at 1.3 grams of silver, identical to the coins of his predecessor Ethelred, ensuring seamless trade while subtly rebranding the monarchy. What makes these pennies remarkable is their role in Sceat's legend. The same ruler who supposedly commanded the tides to prove his humility also issued coins so uniform that historians can trace his movements through their mint marks. Pennies struck in London feature tight, disciplined designs, while those from York show bolder, more Norse-influenced artistry, a proof that Sceat tailored his image regionally. Some even bear the name of his wife, Emma of Normandy, a political alliance stamped into silver. And then there's the irony. Coins proclaiming Sceat's Christian kingship were often hoarded by the very Viking raiders he'd once led, their silver plundered from monasteries now funding new attacks. Yet the real genius lies in the penny's afterlife. After Sceat's death, his empire fractured, but the coin's design endured. Later Anglo-Saxon kings copied its style, and even William the Conqueror initially kept the basic framework, understanding that money's power isn't just in its metal but in its familiarity. Today, holding a Sceat penny is like touching a pivot point in history, the moment a sea king stepped ashore and decided to build rather than burn, leaving his compromise etched in silver for 1,000 years. The crosses may fade, the runes may blur, but the message remains. Conquest isn't just about taking land, but making it yours. The Almoravid gold dinar gleams with the austere beauty of a desert vow, a coin that turned North Africa's sands into rivers of gold. Minted between the 11th and 12th centuries of the Common Era, these dinars bore the unmistakable stamp of a Berber empire that fused Islamic piety with economic genius. On one side, harshly elegant Kufic script proclaims the Shahada, its angular letters arranged with geometric precision, each stroke echoing the Almoravid's puritanical devotion. Flip it over, and the inscription continues, naming the Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad, a diplomatic nod to Sunni unity while discreetly asserting the Almoravid emir's authority as commander of the Muslims. This wasn't just currency, it was a theological bullet fired across the Mediterranean, challenging both Christian kings and rival Muslim dynasties to match its purity. What set the Almoravid dinar apart was its merciless consistency. Weighing 4.25 grams of nearly pure gold, it became the dollar of the medieval Sahara, trusted from the markets of Marrakesh to the trading posts of Timbuktu. The Almoravids, nomadic warriors turned empire builders, understood that controlling trade routes meant controlling belief. Their mints in Sigil Mossa and Agmat churned out dinars with such scrupulous accuracy that European merchants from Barcelona to Genoa accepted them without question, even as their own kings struggled with debased coinage. A single dinar could buy a bolt of Andalusian silk in Fez, a load of salt in Ghana, or a Christian slave in Valencia, its value transcending borders and faiths. The coin's design was a masterclass in minimalist power. Unlike the ornate portraits of Byzantine solidi or the flowing calligraphy of Fatimid dinars, the Almoravid issue leaned into severity. The Kufic script, stripped of decorative flourishes, mirrored the movement's rigid Malachite orthodoxy, yet within that restraint lay sophistication. The letters' spacing and alignment created hidden rhythms, a visual chant in metal. Even the blank spaces spoke no human figures, no elaborate borders, just the unadorned word of God hammered into gold. This austerity wasn't accidental, it was branding. In a world where money reflected a ruler's might, the Almoravids proclaimed their strength through discipline, not decoration. The dinar's influence rippled far beyond Africa. When Christian rulers like Alfonso VIII of Castile needed stable currency to fund their reconquista, they copied the Almoravid dinar's weight and size, creating the Maravdi, a rare case of Muslim finance propping up crusader budgets. Even the Venetian ducat, Europe's premier gold coin for centuries, owed its DNA to these North African discs. The Almoravids, ironically, became unwitting mentors to the very kingdoms they fought. Yet the true testament to this coin's power lies in its journeys. Caravans of camels bore sacks of dinars across the Sahara, their jingle blending with the creak of saddles and the whisper of wind. Jewish merchants in Cairo hoarded them alongside Fatimid coins, while Viking traders in Dublin, who'd never seen a minaret, recognized their gold's worth. Some dinars even reached the court of Ghana's king, where Arab chroniclers reported them being exchanged for nuggets of native gold, perpetuating a cycle of wealth that fed empires. Holding an Almoravid dinar today is to touch the spine of medieval globalization. The gold may bear the nicks of 1,000 transactions, the Cufic letters softened by centuries of handling, but the authority remains. This coin didn't just facilitate trade, it ordained it, proving that even in an age of swords and sieges, real power could be measured in the unyielding purity of stamped metal. The desert may have birthed it, but the world made it immortal. The Crusader bezant is a contradiction in gold, a coin where the cross and the crescent met not in battle but in commerce. Minted in 12th and 13th century Jerusalem under the Crusader kingdom, these coins defied the era's religious divides by marrying Arabic calligraphy with Christian symbolism. On one side, the elegant Cufic script proclaims Islamic declarations of faith, while the reverse bears a Latin cross or the image of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This wasn't just a financial instrument, it was a pragmatic masterpiece of medieval multiculturalism where enemies in faith became partners in trade. The bezant's design was born of necessity. When the Crusaders captured Jerusalem in 1099, they found a thriving economy built on Fatimid dinars coins so trusted that even victorious Christian knights hesitated to replace them. Rather than imposing unfamiliar European currency, the Crusader rulers made a shrewd compromise. They kept the Arabic inscriptions intact, simply adding subtle crosses or Christograms to assert their authority. To a Muslim merchant, the coin still looked like a familiar dinar. To a Christian pilgrim, the tiny crosses signaled divine sanction. This visual duality allowed commerce to flow uninterrupted in a city where faiths collided daily at the bazaars and holy sites. What's fascinating is how the bezant evolved. Early issues copied Fatimid dinars nearly exactly, with only microscopic crosses tucked into the script's flourishes. But as Crusader rule stabilized, the coins grew bolder. Some featured the Tower of David alongside Quranic verses, while others paired the phrase "King of Jerusalem" in Latin with the Fatimid caliph's name in Arabic, a numismatic tightrope walk that acknowledged political realities without surrendering ideological claims. The bezant became a chameleon. In Acre, it might emphasize crosses for Genos traders. In Tripoli, Arabic script dominated to appease local silk merchants. The metal itself told a story of cultural fusion. Crusader mints employed Jewish and Muslim munayers who understood the intricacies of Arabic calligraphy, ensuring the coin's aesthetic legitimacy. Gold for the bezants often came from Byzantine or Armenian sources, refined by Syrian techniques that produced the distinctive reddish hue prized across the Levant. Even the name bezant betrayed its hybrid roots, a Frankish corruption of Byzantium, referencing Constantinople's gold heritage while distancing the coin from its Islamic lineage. Yet the bezant's true brilliance lay in its unintended consequences. These coins circulated far beyond Crusader borders, turning up in Egyptian hoards and Venetian ledgers. Muslim rulers, though politically opposed to the Crusader states, accepted bezants without question. Their gold content spoke louder than theology. Even Saladin, after recapturing Jerusalem in 1187, continued minting similar coins, recognizing their economic power. For a brief historical moment, money achieved what crusades could not, a fragile, functional neutrality where profit outweighed piety. Today, holding a Crusader bezant is like touching a fleeting dream of coexistence. The gold may be worn smooth by centuries of hands, Christian, Muslim, and Jewish alike, but the paradox remains sharp. In an age of swords and sieges, this small disc proved that even holy wars couldn't break the older, deeper laws of supply and demand. The inscriptions may fade, the crosses may blur, but the lesson endures. Sometimes the truest diplomacy is stamped in metal, not signed on parchment. The Mongol silver dirham of Genghis Khan doesn't just gleam with metal, it radiates the unstoppable force of history's largest land empire. Struck in the 13th century of the Common Era, these rugged silver discs were the lifeblood of the Pax Mongolica, the unprecedented peace that let caravans crisscross Eurasia from the Danube to the Yellow River. On one side, the square stamp of the Great Khan's seal presses into the metal, its tribal Tamga's ancestral clan symbols, looking more like the slashes of a sword than bureaucratic marks. The reverse often bears Arabic inscriptions, not out of religious devotion, but because these dirhams were the linguistic franca of Silk Road commerce, a visual handshake between steppe warriors and urban merchants. This wasn't just money, it was the skeleton key to an empire built on horse leather and iron will. Genghis Khan's genius lay in understanding that conquest meant nothing without control, and control required trust in trade. Before the Mongols, the Silk Road was a patchwork of tolls and tariffs, where goods might change hands a dozen times between Xi'an and Baghdad. The Khan's dirhams changed that. Standardized in weight and purity across mints from Karakoram to Bukhara, they became the universal currency of an interconnected world. A Persian spice trader in Samarkand could take dirhams knowing they'd buy just as much in Beijing or Kiev. The Tamgas, often misinterpreted as mere clan signatures, acted as territorial guarantees, each symbol tied to a specific Urdu-Mongol camp, ensuring accountability. Counterfeiters faced executions so brutal they became deterrent folktales, a reminder that the Khan's money was as lethal as his arrows. What's astonishing is how these dirhams mirrored Mongol pragmatism. Unlike the ornate coins of Byzantium or Song China, Genghis's currency was brutally functional. The silver content mattered more than the artistry, and while Arabic script reassured Muslim traders, the Tamgas whispered of steppe traditions no amount of empire could erase. Some dirhams even bear the scars of their creation, uneven strikes where mobile mints, housed in yurts, hammered them out between campaigns. This was money for people who conquered on horseback and ruled from the saddle, their economy as nomadic as their armies. Yet the dirham's true power was its role as an economic lubricant. Under the Pax Mongolica, a Venetian like Marco Polo could travel from Acre to Konbalik, modern Beijing, carrying only these coins, their value unchallenged from the Levant to the Pacific. The Silk Road didn't just flourish, it exploded, with dirhams buying everything from Chinese gunpowder to Russian furs. Even after Genghis's death, his successors kept the system intact, understanding that silver was mightier than the sword when it came to binding an empire. The Ilkhanate in Persia and the Yuan dynasty in China might have different languages and gods, but they shared these dirhams, their shared currency, a silent treaty of mutual profit. Today, holding one of these dirhams is like gripping a piece of the first globalization. The silver is often blackened by centuries in the soil, the Tamgas worn smooth by countless exchanges, but the legacy remains razor-sharp. These coins didn't just fund conquests, they built the wires of a medieval internet, connecting continents long before maps could fathom their scale. In their crude strikes and hybrid scripts, you can still hear the thunder of hooves and the haggling of 1,000 markets, all echoing the same truth. Empires rise and fall, but trust, once stamped into metal, outlives them all. The Aztec gold coyotli wasn't just money, it was sunlight captured in metal, a golden echo of a civilization that measured wealth in feathers, jade, and the sweat of sacred labor. These shimmering discs, crafted from the rich gold deposits of Oaxaca and Guerrero, circulated across the Aztec Empire in the 15th and 16th centuries, their very existence a testament to the ingenuity of a people who had no coined currency but perfected the art of standardized value. Unlike the hammered coins of Europe or the die-struck dinars of the Islamic world, the coyotli was a simple, unmarked circle of pure gold, its worth determined by size and weight rather than the face of a ruler. In the bustling markets of Tenochtitlan, these discs traded hands for everything from cocoa beans to Quetzal feathers, each transaction supervised by the Pochteka, the elite merchant class who acted as both traders and spies for the Aztec state. What makes the coyotli extraordinary is how it reflects the Aztec worldview. Gold, or Teocuitlatl, divine excrement, wasn't just a metal to the Mexica people. it was the sweat of the sun god Tenatia, a sacred substance meant for adorning temples and honoring gods, not hoarding in vaults. The Coyotli's lack of engraving was deliberate. In a society where value was communal and cosmic, stamping a king's face onto sacred metal would have been unthinkable. Even the gold's origin mattered. Mines were state-controlled, and smelting was a ritual act overseen by priests who blew conch shells to purify the metal as it liquefied in clay crucibles. To hold a Coyotli was to hold a piece of the heavens, tempered by human hands but untouched by human vanity. Then came the Spanish. When Cortés and his men arrived in 1519, they saw the Coyotli not as sacred metal but as loot waiting to be melted. Bernal Diaz del Castillo, a conquistador chronicler, described Aztec gold piled in Montezuma's treasury as discs like wheels from a small cart, his simile betraying the Europeans' inability to grasp their symbolic weight. The Coyotli's fate was cruel irony. Ripped from temples and melted into ingots, these discs that once paid for jaguar pelts and obsidian blades were shipped to Seville as bullion, funding wars and cathedrals an ocean away. Some historians estimate that over 180 tons of Aztec gold crossed the Atlantic in just 2 decades, a hemorrhage of cultural heritage that left hollow spaces where the Coyotli once gleamed. Yet the coin's legacy lingers in unexpected places. Modern excavations in Mexico City's Zocalo, once the heart of Tenochtitlan, occasionally unearth tiny gold fragments that might have been Coyotli before Spanish furnaces claimed them. Contemporary Nahua artisans still craft ceremonial gold discs for traditional weddings, their designs a quiet homage to the old ways, and in a twist of poetic justice, the Spanish peso, minted from stolen Aztec gold, became the world's first global currency, its silver and gold leaching back across the same trade routes the Pochteca once walked. Holding a Coyotli today, for the few that survive unmelted, is to touch the ghost of a dual tragedy, the destruction of a sophisticated economic system and the theft of a people's connection to the divine. The gold remains bright, but the world it sustained is gone, leaving only these silent circles to whisper of a time when money wasn't just metal, but a fragment of the sun itself. These 30 coins are more than just pieces of metal, they're tiny, time-worn windows into worlds long gone. From the Athenian Owl Tetradrachm funding philosophy under Pericles to the Aztec Coyotli carrying the sun god's sweat into marketplaces, each one tells a story of how civilizations measured value, wielded power, and expressed identity. Think about it, when you hold a Lydian lion, you're touching the birth of money itself, the first spark of an idea that would shape empires. Flip a Kushan dinar, and you're staring into the face of history's first Buddha on a coin, a silent witness to the cultural collisions of the Silk Road. Every scratch, every uneven edge, every faded inscription is a fingerprint left by hands that built temples, fought wars, and whispered prayers we can only imagine. What's astonishing is how these coins map the invisible connections between societies we often think of as separate. The Samanid dirhams that ended up in Viking hordes, the Roman denarii copied by Celtic tribes, the Crusader bezants that circulated equally in mosques and churches, they prove trade and ambition always found a way, even across battle line. These weren't just currencies, they were diplomats carrying art, language, and ideology wherever they traveled. A single gold solidus of Justinian could buy loyalty from a Lombard mercenary or silk from a Sogdian trader, its value unchallenged from Constantinople to Canton. Coins were the original social media, broadcasting a ruler's face, a god's symbol, or a kingdom's pride faster than any herald could ride, and the artistry. The Decadrachm of Syracuse, with its galloping horses frozen mid-stride, or the Celtic stater's hypnotic spirals, these weren't just payments, they were masterpieces meant to awe. Even the humblest widow's mite, worn smooth by countless palms, carries a beauty in its simplicity, a reminder that value isn't always about the metal, but the hands that held it. The coins we've explored today span continents and millennia, yet they all share one truth. They outlived the kingdoms that made them, surviving wars, plagues, and the slow erosion of time to whisper their stories to us now. So which one speaks to you? Maybe it's the audacity of Brutus's Eid Mar Denarius, a murder weapon in silver form, or the quiet resilience of the Merovingian trines, its rough cross signaling the dawn of medieval Europe. Perhaps it's the Mongol dirham stamped with Genghis Khan's tamga that makes you ponder how a coin could unite a world from horseback. Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear which of these ancient treasures captures your imagination. After all, every coin here is a key, and you've just been handed 30 doors to the past. Which will you open first?